Have your fantasy teams been struggling this year? Or perhaps you've been doing pretty well but want to put yourself over the top? Then make sure to visit our friends over at Finish First Fantasy Advisors. They are the premier one-on-one consulting firm that specializes in providing you with expert support to help guide you to the championship. You will be matched with one of their expert advisors to provide you with the season-long insight for your redraft, dynasty, or DFS formats. Their advisors will contact you weekly to answer all of your questions and provide you the needed information to get to the next level. Set up a free 15-minute consultation by emailing them at info@finishfirstfantasy.com or by visiting them at www.finishfirstfantasy.com. That's www.finishfirstfantasy.com.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of the SkullKing Sports Fantasy Football Podcast, presented by Dr. Squatch Soaps. Get 20% off orders of $20 or more at drsquatch.com when you use the promo code SKS20. That's get 20% off of orders of $20 or more at drsquatch.com when you use the promo code SKS20. My name is Ryan Scullard. I am your host, and we have now finished with Week 3 in the fantasy football season. I hope your guys' seasons are going well. Mine, I'm kind of all over the place in terms of how my teams are looking right now. I think I've got 2 or 3 of them at 1-2, 2 of them at 2-1. So it's been one of those seasons dealing with a lot of injuries, which, you know, I know a lot of people were expecting and sort of predicting simply because of how many or because of how much time was missed in terms of preseason and with COVID and everything going on with that, and just the lockdowns and everything. There just wasn't the same amount of real practice time, game speed type practice. So this isn't necessarily a surprise that it's been as brutal injury-wise this year as it has been. So tonight we are going over some injury news, as well as we are going over our waiver wire pickups for the week going into Week 4. I hope you guys are able to get 1 or 2 of these guys to help out your fantasy teams and get you guys ready for Week 4. So we're going to just go ahead and hop right into this with today's headlines. We started off last night talking about Mitchell Trubisky getting benched. Well, it's officially been announced today that Nick Foles has been announced as the starting quarterback for Week 4 for the Chicago Bears. They're going to be going up against the Indianapolis Colts, and it's going to be a little bit of a tough test for Nick Foles. As far as fantasy points against, the Indianapolis Colts are the second best in terms of going up against quarterbacks. They're 6th best in terms of going up against running backs. They are the best going against tight ends. Now, not that they've really faced any teams that have any big tight ends. That being said, it will be a little bit of tough sledding for the Bears and for Nick Foles in that one. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Story number 2: Phillip Lindsay may actually be back Week 4 for Thursday Night Football. Saw a note on Fantasy Pros that it's possible he will be back. He's been dealing with a turf toe injury. This is something to kind of watch. I have Phillip Lindsay in 1 or 2 leagues, and so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. If he can go Thursday night, it's a really nice matchup against the New York Jets, who give up the 7th most amount of fantasy points to running back. So it'd be, if he can get on, if he is healthy enough to actually be playing, him and Melvin Gordon should put up a decent amount of points in that game against the Jets, because the Jets are just plain terrible. They're awful. There's no other way to put it. So, story number 3, we talked about last night in last night's show that Chris Carson's injury was not as bad as originally feared. I'm telling you, when I saw the way that the defender twisted his knee when he rolled as he tackled him, I I thought it was ACL right off the bat. Turns out it is a sprain. It's a grade 1 sprain, I believe is what they said. So it looks like he's going to be out 1 to 2 weeks. So we will talk about kind of how that affects waiver wires and stuff like that. But Chris Carson is going to be out 1 to 2 weeks. I believe I'd have to check this again. I think the Seahawks bye week is week 6. So what that could mean is if he misses 2 weeks, it would actually be a 3-week break. Don't quote me on that. I didn't actually pull that up to figure that out. But missing 1 to 2 weeks, the Seahawks do have some running backs that can fill in some holes for you in the meantime. A couple other headlines. Dallas Goedert looks like he's going to be out sometime with his ankle injury. Jordan Reed, after having a decent game, is going to go on injured reserve for 6 to 8 weeks. And Michael Pittman will underwent surgery on his calf, expected to be back around week 8. Apparently, he injured his calf and developed what I believe what they call compartment syndrome in his calf. I believe it's where basically a pocket of bruising of blood basically holds and causes some major issues and basically cuts off circulation to nerves. It can be very painful. And so had to deal with that. Looks like they were able to take care of it. They're expecting him to be back right around just after the Indianapolis Colts bye week. So those are our headlines for the day. Not a whole lot of other injury news. For those of you who were able to watch the Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens game, I was somewhat pleasantly surprised. As a Mahomes owner, I was pleasantly surprised in terms of just how well he was able to go into Baltimore and do that to the Baltimore defense. Their defense just did not seem prepared tonight. It did not help that the Chiefs defense was able to do enough to keep Baltimore off the field a lot. Baltimore really struggled tonight. So there's still, I think, it very well could be that Lamar Jackson is having a little bit of an MVP hangover. Very well could be. We'll kind of see how this plays out over the next couple of weeks. But very, very surprised that the Chiefs were able to just really take it to Baltimore tonight and to that defense. So for to apologize for knocking down Patrick Mahomes in my rankings this week. I didn't have him 1 or 2. I think I had him as number 5. I think he ended up being the number 1 or 2 overall for the week. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into our waiver wire madness for week 4. All right, starting it off, we are going to go with the QBs, and I mean I have these somewhat ranked. If you can go to our website SkullKingSports.com. Under the fantasy football tab, you should be able to see our waiver wire rankings. Or go to, just click on the tab. Our waiver wire rankings should show up on there. I may mess with the order that I have these in, but for right now, this is the way I've got them. Right now, I may have to actually fix them on the website. So, starting off, I have Nick Foles as the top quarterback to pick up this week. Now I know Kirk Cousins, probably has a few more weapons to throw to. Going up against Houston. Houston's defense has kind of been back and forth. Let me see. Against the pass, they're number 17 in terms of giving up fantasy points to the quarterback position. Number 20, giving up points to wide receivers. So it's not, Houston, their main thing is giving up points to the running back. So I see next week more of a Dalvin Cook type of script for Minnesota. So for that reason, I have Cousins my third quarterback to pick up. Nick Foles is my number one, even against Indianapolis, because I think that looking ahead at their schedule, let me pull up that schedule. I think that Nick Foles probably he's got Tampa Bay, he's got Carolina, the Rams, who played pretty well but got chewed up by the Bills. Can't even talk tonight. Then New Orleans, Tennessee, and Minnesota. So he does have some favorable matchups coming up. So I'm still okay with Nick Foles. It's going to be back and forth, but if you're looking a little more long term, I probably prefer Nick Foles. To my number 2, who is Ryan Fitzpatrick. Really the only reason I'm picking Ryan Fitzpatrick is because he is going to be at home going against the Seahawks next week. And the Seahawks, as we saw, give up a ton of yards and points to quarterbacks and wide receivers. Now, for those of you who heard my episode last week, and for those of you who maybe saw the live stream in our Facebook page, I actually said that I thought that CeeDee Lamb was the better pick over Gallup for this last week against the Seahawks. And it turns out that it actually was Gallup. But what I didn't know until just before game time was that the Seahawks had declared Quentin Dunbar out. And Quentin Dunbar was going to be the guy who was going to be on Gallup most of the game. And it turns out that it was Trey Flowers, and had I known that Trey Flowers was going to be the starting corner, I definitely would have gone with Gallup over CeeDee Lamb. So hopefully Dunbar is able to play next week. If Dunbar is not able to play and it's Trey Flowers again, it's going to be another big game for either Preston or for Devontae Parker. I really think that because of the way that the Seahawks put up points and their inability to pass rush, that's what's providing so much time for. That's what's providing the ability for quarterbacks and wide receivers to just work over the secondary. Part of what made the Legion of Boom for Seattle, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 and 7 years ago. Oof. Hard to believe it's been that long. Part of what made them so brutal and just so devastating was the fact that they had a pass rush in Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill, as well as they had multiple other role players that could get the job done. Bruce Irvin when he was younger. Those kind of things were what provided the opportunity for that defensive backfield to really shine. That's not the case right now. They don't have a pass rush. And while they have a very, very talented defensive backfield in Shaquille Griffin, Quentin Dunbar, Jamal Adams, and Diggs, they can't. No defender, no defensive back is going to be able to cover for 10 seconds on a regular basis. It's just not going to happen. And so you're going to have holes. And so because of that, because the Seahawks don't have a pass rush, unfortunately, until they get one, I am advocating for any quarterback that has a decent set of wide receivers to stream against the Seahawks, especially with how good their offense is. The offense has been throwing the ball all over the yard. Russ with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf have just been unstoppable. Because of that, teams are going to have to throw in order to keep up. And we even see that in the defense, in the defensive fantasy points allowed. Go to fantasypros.com, look up fantasy points allowed. The Seahawks are, I want to say, like third or fourth best. Fifth best against running backs and fourth best against tight ends, but they give up the second worst in terms of giving up fantasy points to quarterbacks, and the worst at giving up fantasy points to the wide receivers, and it's not even close. They give up 13, almost 14 points more a week to wide receivers than the number 2 team in the Dallas Cowboys, and 2 more to the Atlanta Falcons, who are number 3. So really, you need to stream wide receivers. Wide receivers and quarterbacks right now are a good bet against the Seahawks until they can prove that they can get a pass rush and stop the passing game. So because of that, long-winded answer to say, I would be happy streaming Ryan Fitzpatrick next week against the Seahawks. Against my own team. Yes, I would do that. So, moving on to the running backs. Right now, in terms of, there isn't a whole lot of long-term answers or possibilities for the running back position from what I've seen so far. Pulling up my my waiver wire rankings. Let me get the running backs here. Really the guys that are listed, it's Rex Burkhead, Carlos Hyde, Damian Harris, Jeff Wilson, Brian Hill, and Frank Gore. The 2 that I think are quote-unquote long-term would be Damian Harris and possibly Brian Hill. And the reason I say that is because Rex Burkhead really, once James White comes back, if he comes back this season, he may take the rest of the season off, dealing with the death of his father and his mother being in critical condition. I have not actually I have not seen any updates on how his mother is doing and whether or not he'll be back. I just know he was out the last 2 weeks. We don't know about this next week yet. But New England, if James White comes back, he's going to take over that Rex Burkhead role. Rex Burkhead isn't going to, it likely is not going to be putting up that many points like he has been. If Rex Burkhead is the guy to get, if James White is going to miss another couple weeks. Other than that, I am not going to use a lot of fab or I'm not going to use priority on Rex Burkhead unless I'm 0-3 and are desperate for running back help. So this next week, Burkhead goes up against Kansas City. Kansas City has been okay. They're giving up they're 24th in terms of giving up points to running backs. So they've been somewhat stout. Top 10 defense in terms of giving up fantasy points to the running back. So not the best matchup for Rex Burkhead this next week. Carlos Hyde, I have as one of the pickups, and Travis Homer. Carlos Hyde is likely to get the start. He's going to be more the bruising back. Travis Homer is going to be the guy to get, I think, in more PPR type settings. I'm trying to see if I don't have him here. Huh. He's not on this list. Okay, so I don't have him. But he is a guy that he's going to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. He has played pretty well in the few opportunities that he's had. And so because of that, I think that he is definitely a guy to pick up for. There he is. Definitely think he's a guy to pick up for PPR leagues. Now, he hasn't scored many points, but he's also been the third running back. Right now, he has had 8 rushes so far, but 8 rushes for 39 yards. He's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. He's also been used a little bit in the passing game. And so I like Travis Homer. If he's getting as much usage as Carlos Hyde, he's going to put up some numbers in deeper PPR leagues. We talked about Rex Burkhead. Damian Harris is the other guy that I think could be a long-term pickup. And here's why. Sonny Michel has not been great. To put a finer point on it. I mean, he finally had a decent game this last week. 9 carries for 117 yards. But again, he was going up against Las Vegas, who gave up, was giving up the third most amount of fantasy points to running backs. Going up against KC and Denver, and then week 6 bye. So, and then after that, he comes back against San Francisco, Buffalo, has a Baltimore in there. So it's not the best. Sonny Michel, again, he's kind of been back and forth. I don't know whether to trust him or not. Damian Harris had been showing so much promise before getting his finger tore up, that I think that Damian Harris could possibly come through and take over that lead back spot from Sonny Michel. Now, again, we still need to wait until he's officially back off of IR. I don't know if they've actually made that announcement yet on him. So for now, I think he's still on IR. And so I like Damian Harris. I think that he could, by the end of the year, take over the job from Sonny Michel. So he is a long-term. He's one of those guys that don't use priority on him. But if you have the extra space on a maybe deeper bench, I would try to stash him if you can. And Brian Hill's been just as explosive so far this year as Todd Gurley. And so Brian Hill's another one of those guys that it could be that down the road, if Atlanta is Atlanta's already 0-3, they could, they're very well probably going to be 0-4 after going against Green Bay on Monday Night Football this next week. They could maybe try to give Brian Hill a little more work. I mean, they've seen what he can do, and if he's being more productive than Todd Gurley, I don't see why they don't just go with Brian Hill. So, all right, getting into the wide receivers. My first one, Brandon Ayuk, 22% rostered, going up against Philadelphia this next week. He kind of took over that Deebo Samuel role. Deebo Samuel is expected to be back hopefully in week 5. He's starting to practice now, I believe, this next week. Again, with the Jones fracture in the foot, the big risk of re-injury, so they're trying to wait, trying to make sure that he doesn't get re-injured when they're already dealing with George Kittle, and then they had Jordan Reed go down. Jimmy Garoppolo's been injured, and their top 2 running backs are injured. So they're going to want to make sure that they're that they've got someone like Deebo Samuel as healthy as possible. Ayuk showed a lot in this last game. Now, again, going against the wonderful defense, of the New York Jets, or sorry, the New York Giants. 5 catches, 70 yards. He's going up against Philadelphia this next week. And Philly, in terms of what they do, they middle of the road, giving up points to the wide receivers. So I think there's plenty of opportunity out there for him. Justin Jefferson just screaming off the massive week. We'll see if he can continue that. And we talked about this in yesterday's show. Is he possibly the new number 2? Has he overtaken Ola B.C. Johnson? B.C. Johnson hasn't really done much. Hasn't been given a ton of opportunities, as far as I could see. Now, Vikings fans may disagree with me there. Say, yeah, he's had the opportunity, just isn't going to be the guy. That's fine. I have not gotten a chance to see enough game tape from the Vikings to know if that's the case or not. Justin Jefferson seems like the real deal. And again, top pick, a top wide receiver pick because of it. So, I think that he is definitely, if you're needing some wide receiver help, he very well could be one of the next big guys, to really take off his rookie year. So, with having someone like Adam Thielen playing opposite him, that's going to provide a lot of opportunity for Justin Jefferson. So, I've got 2 more guys on here that I'm going to have to rearrange my rankings on my waiver wire, simply because Cole Beasley does not get enough love. if you were playing in a full point PPR or even half point PPR, if you're playing in a half or full point PPR and Cole Beasley is still available, Cole Beasley is averaging still, because of how much they are throwing the ball in Buffalo, Cole Beasley is still averaging like 7 or 8 targets a game. He finished with 100 yards this last week. He is a target monster playing out of the slot. He was when he was with the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. He's that still now with Josh Allen as his quarterback. So coming up this next week against Las Vegas, who aren't great. I mean, they're pretty good against wide receivers, and they really, for the most part, kind of shut down the New England Patriots this last week. But they give up a lot to running backs, and so Beasley, because he plays in the slot, I think still has an opportunity to be pretty good, even in this next week's matchup. So if you're desperate for some wide receiver help, you're dealing with injuries, Julio, Devontae. What are some wide receivers? You've even got Chris Godwin looking like he could miss some time. That is Cole Beasley's definitely a guy that in PPR formats could really give you a little bit of a boost. Not that it's going to be necessarily a huge week, but could at least give you enough points to survive the week. And Keelan Cole, I've got on here, 34% rostered, going up against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense so far this year in terms of giving up points to the wide receiver, they're third best as of right now. And the only reason to pick up Keelan Cole is the fact that DJ Chark may not be playing this week. Keelan Cole will be the number 1 wide receiver if Chark is out. If not, he moves to number 2, and Chark's going to get all the targets. So, again, it's not a great matchup, but again, he becomes the de facto number 1 if you're desperate for wide receiver help. The only last guy that I would mention in terms of wide receiver pickups, I mentioned the Chris Godwin thing, would be Scotty Miller. Again, he should be widely available on pretty much all your leagues for Tampa Bay. So moving on, last but not least, we have our tight end pickups. Number 1 for me is Jimmy Graham, 11% rostered, going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Colts are the best team right now against tight ends. Again, I'd have to look back at their schedule, but I don't think they've really gone up against a big-time tight end yet. I think they're the best tight end they've faced. No, I'm not even sure the best tight end they've faced. So Jimmy Graham, he is going to be targeted a lot by Nick Foles. Nick Foles coming out of Philadelphia originally. I don't really count. I'll be honest. I don't really count the whole Jacksonville 1 year thing. A half a year due to his broken collarbone. Coming out of Philadelphia, where the offense really was mostly the tight ends, passes out to the running backs with a couple of deep shots to wide receivers like Alshon Jeffrey. In this offense, it's Jimmy Graham and A-Rob. And he is going to be throwing to those 2 guys. I think those are going to be his main guys. Anthony Miller did show up. He got a deep pass out, Anthony Miller. I think that Jimmy Graham and Robinson are going to be the 2 main targets. And so because of that, I like Jimmy Graham. I think he may have a little bit of a renaissance, coming back a little bit at this point in his career with Nick Foles, as long as Nick Foles can stay upright and stay healthy. Number 2 is alie-cox, 9% rostered, going against the New York Jets, who, again, as we have said over and over again, are just a horrible team. They give up the 9th most amount of points to fantasy tight ends. And Phillip Rivers loves throwing to the tight end, and right now it looks like alie-cox, due to his athletic ability, may be moving ahead of Jack Doyle as the tight end of choice for Phillip Rivers. So because of that, I like alie-cox. I have him in a couple of deeper leagues. He is definitely on that streaming radar that may become a regular starter, depending on, again, how much Phillip Rivers likes targeting him. So The other two, Logan Thomas, 26% roster, going up against Baltimore. Baltimore struggles a little bit against the tight end. We saw that a little bit tonight with Kelsey. Now, I'm not saying that Logan Thomas is another version of Travis Kelsey, not even in the slightest. That being said, they're Baltimore's middle of the road against tight ends, and I want to say Logan Thomas is second, he might even be second on the team in targets so far this year, behind Terry McLaurin. So he very well could get the targets, especially if Haskins is struggling to get the ball out anywhere else. And last one, Robert Tonyan, and 1% roster, going up against Atlanta. So it's a great matchup because they're going up against Atlanta. But the only reason I have Tonyan on here, I don't think Tonyan has the games that he's had the last 2 weeks if Davante Adams is healthy. The only reason Robert Tonyan should be rostered next week, and he's more of like a DFS play, only if Davante Adams misses next week. I don't think Tonyan gets the same attention from Rodgers if Davante Adams is on the field. I think everything's going to go through him, with a little bit going to Lazard or MVS. So Robert Tonyan, again, 1% rostered, going against Atlanta. Great matchup for him. I don't want Robert Tonyan in a starting spot unless Davante Adams is out. If Davante Adams is out, Tonyan could be another great streamer to get a touchdown. So, all right, that is it. I hope you guys have had a wonderful week again. We're looking forward to this next week. Tomorrow I will be going over, I believe, some DFS plays, maybe previewing games just a little bit. I hope you guys are able to get the guys that you were looking for, the guys that you need in order to fill some spots and have a good week this next week for your fantasy teams. Again, we will hopefully be doing another episode tomorrow, depending on how my computer is working. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. Again, this has been the SkullKing Sports Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrud, and we will talk to you guys later. Hey, SkullKing Nation, thank you for listening to the SkullKing Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.